event proper, before we move to the event proper, let me go over the missing etiquettes. First of all, if you're speaking, please kindly mute. If you're not speaking, kindly mute your mic to prevent distraction. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to drop them in the comment box with a queue. For sessions where you'll be allowed to speak, kindly raise your hands in the comment box. Now we have gotten over this. So let me allow the next speaker to come over for his opening remark. The first speaker name is Mr. Ruben C.D. Costime. He's currently our PGD course rep. And please, a virtual applause as Ruben takes over from me. Mr. Ruben, thank you very much for doing this.
I'm here. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I'm here. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, Mr. Ruben. Yeah.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can I go on now? Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Petrofest 2022. Now, a brief history about Institute of Petroleum Studies.
Hello, Mr. Ruben. Hello, Mr. Ruben. We can't hear you. Hello, Mr. Ruben. We can't hear you.
Sorry for that brief transmission. So the Institute of Petroleum Studies has partnership with NNPC, Total Energies, and Uniport. And since its inception in 2003, has developed thousands of industry graduates who are high flyers in the oil and gas industry. IPS has graduates who are working in Total Energies, Schlumberger, Halliburton, ExxonMobil, Ajib, Shell, etc. Some of which are with us in this meeting. And the question is, why greener energy? What is the drive? Will it be hydrocarbon or gas? These are some of the questions that will be answered in the course of this meeting. And what better time do we have to discuss and interact on the need for greener energy than now? I want to use this medium to appreciate and thank the career team, the resource person, and everyone who has been the driving force behind Petrofest 2022, which theme is driving reliable and sustainable energy system in Africa. To our distinguished audience, I say thank you for tuning in. There is a lot to learn, and opportunities will also be given for questions, discussion, and quiz. So thank you for your audience. Thank you. I remain Ruben Chidi-Gostam.
Thank you, Mr. Ruben, for that wonderful opening remark. Really appreciate it. Our first speaker is Mr. Henry Adigwu. Please, next slide. Mr. Henry Adigwu is a graduate from the University of Port Harcourt from the Department of Geology in PGD. He's currently a PGD student, and he's our career team lead for the PGD class. He's an entrepreneur who loves things done in the right way and loves to look for business opportunities. Please, can you move over to the next slide? The next slide, please.
Okay.
Yes. Please, Please,
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's actually a great privilege for me to be speaking with you right now. And it's my goal for us all to transition into, with the current trend. So I'm going to be speaking on gas sustainability for Africa in the energy transition in Africa. Please confirm that you can see. Can you see my slide? Okay, thank you very much. Okay. So basically, we've all seen, for those of us who have lived in Port Harcourt for quite a while, obviously, we've seen scenarios whereby you woke up in the morning and then the whole place was full of smog, and then you just couldn't really move around. And sometimes you began to wonder whether you've eventually landed in Europe or probably in America. But the sad news about it is that you're still in Africa. In fact, you're still in Nigeria. You have not even taken a flight ticket. So nothing really changed. But the very painful thing about it is the fact that you notice that your house, your windows, your net, everywhere was covered with black soot. Now, this is one of the disadvantages of making use of fossil fuel. As much as, yes, it was being done with illegal refining and illegal mining, but one thing still remains the fact that fossil fuel will always be a hazard to for the now, until there are better ways of refining oil in which the smoke is not, or the soot is not really able to affect human beings. So because of this, there's a great need for us to transition. And that's the reason why we are looking at cleaner sources of energy. And one of them we're going to be looking at today is gas. So natural gas is actually a non-renewable, odorless, colorless, flammable, and non-toxic hydrocarbon. Now, technically, natural gas could be considered partially renewable, though some aspects of natural gas are replenishable, whereas others are not. Of course, when we are talking about renewable, one of the first things we need to consider is the fact that something that can be renewed. When you look at the sun doesn't get old, it can be renewed. When you also consider wind, the wind is not something that can get used up, but natural gas, it's not renewable. It can actually get exhausted. So for instance, you could have 100 million cubic scuff of gas in your reservoir, and in the next 50 years, that 100 million probably has depleted down to 50. It cannot be renewed. So that's the first thing we need to understand, that natural gas is not renewable, cannot be renewed, but things like solar, wind, those are things that can actually be, that we tag as renewable. So one of the importance of natural gas in the energy transition is that it's a cleaner option than fossil fuels, and it's often a bridge towards the renewable energy. But yet, of course, natural gas still has greenhouse gas, but it doesn't remain in the atmosphere as long as CO2 does. So the awesome thing again about it is the fact that yes, it's there in the atmosphere, but how long does it stay? Well, in the case of CO2, it could last for a long period of time. When you go to places where we have our refineries, you will notice that the cloud is always dark. And part of the reason why you notice this, or probably in the creek where illegal refining is actually being done, you will notice that the atmosphere is nothing to write home about. There's a whole lot of environmental hazard that is being done there. So we're going to be looking at kinds of natural gas storage, and then we have peak load storage and base load storage. Now for peak load storage, this is usually for seasonal demands, and it's at this point in time whereby there is always a huge demand for gas. Now, one of the things that we are experiencing because of the current Ukraine war with Russia, of course, most of the countries have begun to clamor, especially those in Europe, that are beginning to clamor for gas. And the thing is, they've actually come to Nigeria, asking Nigeria, okay, please, we want to have your gas. Nigeria has a huge reserve for gas. Most of them are not really utilized as much as the oil reservoirs have been used. And so it's very, very funny, you know, to understand now that, okay, look at it, that most of these companies are actually coming over to Nigeria and they're saying, okay, please, this is what we want. We need your gas. Because most persons are not willing to buy again from Russia because of all the sanctions US has put on them and all that. But then again, so during the peak load storage, what happens? During winter and then during summer, when the heat gets intense, most persons need to turn on their ACs and all that so that they can actually have a cool environment. And when you begin to consider during the winter, they get so cold and they need to heat up their room. And one of the things they make use of is natural gas. During those high peaks, that's when we have peak load storage. And for peak load storage, if what countries like Europe and US do, countries in Europe and then in US, what they simply do is that they store gas and they keep it so that when that time comes, they can be able to release from their reserves, from their extra storage. Now, base load is just at high deliverability, but usually for a short period of time, while the peak load is used for transferring and transporting to longer destinations. So methods from natural gas storage, we have underground gas storage, we have liquefied natural gas. In the case of underground gas storage, we have what we make use of depleted reservoirs, we have salt caverns, and then we also make use of aquifers for storage of gas. Now, liquefied natural gas is the scenario whereby gas, your natural gas, let's take for instance, inside your room, if gas, or probably your gas cylinder were to be open, you would notice that it could fill the atmosphere, probably get into your living room and all that. But you see that same gas that's filled your room, if it was compressed into a bottle, you would notice that it would just take a little portion of that bottle, probably your ever bottle. Now that's because the natural gas can be compressed to 1/600 of its size. So you can see how effective that is. So the beautiful thing about the liquefied natural gas is that it allows transportation over a long period, over a long aerial extent. So for instance, I can be able to transport natural gas from Port Harcourt down to Kaduna. I can transport natural gas down to Boronu. I can transport natural gas down to Abuja. Why? By compressing the size under high pressure and moving it in liquid as a form of liquid instead of gas. So you have more space. You have more space to contain your gas once you change it into liquefied natural gas. So this is actually an image of the storage tank, and usually natural gas or LNG, it's usually stored at -161 degrees centigrade. That is very, very low. So let's take, for instance, let me make you understand what you can really look at, see these at. You know, here in Nigeria, we don't really experience cold that much. But imagine you holding ice block, and ice block is usually at 0 degrees centigrade. Just imagine you holding ice block for long, and then you multiplying the intensity of that ice block by 161 times. That's exactly the same thing you will be seeing when that's the temperature at which liquefied natural gas is stored. So you have an idea. Now, for storage facilities in for natural gas, one of them we have here is the salt cavern. So we have the salt cavern, and for the salt caverns, you notice that what we simply do is that we have places where salt is stored underneath the earth. Let me give this particular scenario. Some years back, actually, one of the things we noticed was the Chinese were actually one of the first set of persons who discovered oil, but the truth is that they never saw it as hydrocarbon, they saw it as a waste. One of the things that made them to discover it, they called it the foul-smelling liquid. One of the things that made them make this discovery was when they were looking for salt. So salt is actually found underneath the earth. So what we simply do is that we pump in fresh water into the salt that is stored underneath the earth, as the image shows you here clearly. And then the water melts the salt around. And then there's also another tap, another pipe to lift out the brine. The brine here is still salt water. So once the salt water is taken out, there is a cavity or there's a hole in the earth or the subsurface. This subsurface, this hole in the earth, is where our natural gas is being pumped into. And it can be as large as a mile in diameter. That's the depth, how large it is, and 30,000 feet in height. Now, for natural gas storage, the distance of 1,500 to 600 feet is usually considered. Now, it requires about 33% of the total gas to be used as cushion gas and the highest gas deliverability. So now I'm going to just briefly explain to you what we call cushion gas and working gas. Now, usually when you're making use of a reservoir or you're making use of anything underneath the subsurface, whether it's your aquifer or you're making use of your salt cavern, one of the things you need to realize is that when you put in your processed gas into the reservoir, have it at the back of your mind that if you put in 100 liters of gas, you cannot be able to recover 100 liters of gas. You might likely be able to recover maybe 50 liters or probably 30 liters for the first time. Now, the gas that remains in the reservoir is what we call the cushion gas based on pressure. So for instance, your gas came in with a whole lot of pressure, was pumped into your reservoir, was pumped into your aquifer, your salt cavern. At a point in time, for you to be able to release it according to the amount of pressure that you have, you definitely need a pressure high enough to push it up to the wellhead and then to your manifold and then into the various pipelines. But once the pressure is not sufficient enough, the remaining gas stays in the reservoir. So for us to ensure we constantly have gas flowing, we need to keep a specific minimum amount of gas that every single time we come there, that gas will always be there. It's untouchable, you don't touch it. So for the first time when you're filling in your reservoir, you have to have it at the back of your mind, okay, I need to fill my reservoir with about 50 liters, remaining 50 liters is going to go. So for salt caverns, you notice that there's 33% of total gas is going to be used as cushion gas and has a highest gas deliverability. So the next, so this is actually examples of what your salt caverns look like. You can see it underneath the earth and how it can be extracted after gas has been pumped in. Now your aquifer, in the case of your aquifer, we have about 80% is used as cushion gas or base gas. The gas that is usually allowed to flow through the pipeline when it's time for you to recover it is known as working gas. Now, the reason is, I'm sure probably someone will begin to ask, why do we have to go back into the reservoir or underneath the air to store gas? The reason why we are storing gas, one is because we do not have enough storage for us to say, okay, yes, we are storing gas. Yes, you could build storage tanks, but the truth is, how big enough is your storage tanks? Now, you need to understand this, that whenever gas is being produced, gas is not stored usually by the processing companies. For instance, if Petrochem in Ndorama is asking LNG, they're saying, please, we need gas. When LNG produces this gas, the gas is produced and sent directly to the off-takers who take the gas. So usually nobody tries to store gas. Everybody, once the gas is created for your purpose, because gas is specific for every particular client. So the person who uses fertilizer, who needs gas for fertilizer, has his own purpose. Another company might tell you, please, I need 8% ethane, I need 4% propane. Another person is telling you, I need 99% methane. Now, every single of those clients have their need. And so because of that, the processing company makes gas according to client specification. So once the gas is made, it's sent directly to their off-takers and then shipped to wherever it is for regasification at their various storages. But the best form of storage, because when you consider the fact that when you look at the reservoir is so large. Your reservoir can be able to contain as much. Don't forget that the gas that we are talking about still came out from the reservoir. But this time around, what are we doing? We are pumping back that same processed gas. The gas has already been processed, sweetened, H2S, CO2, water, and everything has been removed. It has been fully dehydrated. We've taken all those things out. That same processed gas is also sending back into the reservoir. But when we're talking about depleted reservoir, these are reservoirs that have already been used. They've exhausted all the oil inside of it, or the gas inside of it. And probably whatever is left there cannot really be recovered at that point in time. It's seen as it's no longer economically viable for the company that was utilized, that was making use of that reservoir. So that is when we send it back into the depleted reservoir. That reservoir has been used up. So for the aquifer, our cushion gas is basically about 80%. So it means that you have 20% as your working gas. So this is an exact image of what your depleted reservoir looks like. Now, the depleted reservoir is usually the cheapest and the easiest to develop, operate, and maintain. Why is this so? Remember that before any mining, any drilling is being done in a reservoir or in a field, extensive studies have already been carried out. So the companies, so let's say, for instance, Shell is done drilling a particular well or a particular reservoir or a particular field. And after they're done, we go there and we say to Shell, please, we want to buy over your brown field or want to buy over your depleted reservoir. Shell says, okay, fine, give us this percentage and all that, and everybody settles it. So with that, Shell gives us the blueprints of the field. They give us everything that we need. And so we already know the capacity that the reservoir can be able to take. And we don't have any problem. So it's one of the cheapest. Now, unlike the aquifer, in the case of the aquifer, you need to run new seismic studies. You need to go back again, bring in your seismic trucks, run your vibrosis, run everything afresh, and that's going to cost you a whole lot. But in the scenario of the depleted reservoir, is the cheapest because all the studies have already done. You don't need to have loggerheads and all that for you to begin to send in your processed gas. Now, Africa is one of the most populous countries with over 200 million, has the 9th largest gas reserve globally, and 209.5 trillion cubic feet. Now, 50% each of associated gas and non-associated gas. That's how blessed we are in Africa. Now, Nigeria actually has an average daily production of 800 million cubic of gas daily. But ironically, as you can actually see, domestic gas consumption is just 1.5 billion in Nigeria. So which means we're actually making use of less than 20% of gas that's produced in Nigeria. So that's one of the things you will notice. So meaning that Nigerians are not really using the gas they are producing. So the next question is, if Nigeria is not really utilizing the gas that is being produced, it means there is actually a big opportunity for us. If Africa is saying that we want to shift to a cleaner source of energy, then it's evident that we have what it takes for us to get there. It's evident that we can always be able to utilize this and make headway with this. So one of the opportunities that is available for us in Africa, it's the very fact that natural gas has numerous uses, potentials all over the country. And that's what I really want to focus on. It can be used as LNG, CNG, LPG, just like I told you earlier on. And then for manufacturing industries, cement, they need gas, steel, glass, and textile, they all need gas. Every company that runs a generator, one way or the other, needs gas. There are companies in Nigeria that currently make use of gas. There are still very few cars that actually make use of gas. Now, when we go to places like US, Europe, gas is a normal thing. Their cars run on gas. So for gas-based fertilizer industries, we have fertilizers, methanol, petrochemicals, household fuel, cooking and heating. But one of the things we've noticed about utilization of gas in Nigeria is that we've noticed that gas tends to be going high. But if everybody is moving and pushing for a cleaner source of energy, because don't be surprised that some banks will not also be willing to give you. Don't forget that some banks these days are all moving and they are pushing and they're saying, no, if you're not bringing something that is environmentally friendly, they are trying to pull out. So the best way for you to be able to get loan from the bank is for you to tell them, please, this is what I'm coming in with. This is what we intend to do. We are coming with something that is environmentally friendly, something that is not going to harm our environment. And gas is that solution that we are looking out for. So how can entrepreneurs come in? And do I necessarily have to be a petroleum engineer for me to benefit from this opportunity? No, not at all. Do I necessarily need to have $10 billion? Do I necessarily need to have $1 billion before I can begin to harness this opportunity? No, not at all. Now we're going to be looking at some of the opportunities that are available for, though probably someone says, okay, I have 10 million, I have 50 million, even if you have 1 million. Now, so what do we do? One of them is that we could become a group of persons who want to be hiring gas tankers for mobility of natural gas. So let's say I have 3 persons, Mr. A, Mr. B, and Mr. C. Mr. A, B, C comes together and they say, okay, our job is that we're going to buy tankers, and everybody who wants to transport gas, probably from Port Harcourt down to Kano State, our tankers will be available. Specialized tankers. Specialized tankers. We can also have off-takers on the sea who are also saying the same thing. Now, when I'm talking about from Port Harcourt to Kano, we are looking at landlocked countries, landlocked states, places that where you don't have the ability, there's no sea, no river for you to be able to move your ship or anything. So we are saying that within the lands, that tankers can be able to move from Port Harcourt down to Kano. That's the first one. Now, another set of persons can also come and they can say, okay, fine, we want to buy gas from LNG and then send this gas down to Kano. We are going to have a place in Kano where we can also deliver gas. So what do? They do not need to go ahead to buy a tanker because it's going to cost them more. All they are simply saying is, please just get us a tanker. We're going to hire your tanker. Please, for us to hire your tanker, we need to hire it for 100,000, 200,000. for transporting probably 1,000 liters of gas, of LNG. So that's what they're saying. We're going to transfer it. And for 1,000 liters or 10,000 liters, that's all they are saying. So they just come to you, they pay LNG, you send your tanker to NLNG, and then after it has been loaded, you move down to Kano. These are the various opportunities available. There is still another set of persons who can say good and fine. We notice that there are places in Nigeria where okay, let me explain the reason. One of the reasons why it looks like gas is actually high in South-South, Southeast, Southwest, is very simple. After gas has been released from NLNG, the gas is rerouted through Bonny Port, through Bonny, it goes through the river, goes back to Lagos before getting back to Harcourt. The gas that you're seeing, your cooking gas and everything. So you see it goes through Lagos before it finally comes down into Port Harcourt again. So that's part of the reason why we are seeing that gas price has actually been skyrocketing. But we are saying, what if we have a gas tank in Port Harcourt? What if we have a gas tank in Abia State? What if we have a gas tank in Imo State? What if we have a gas tank in Kano State? And we're saying, as long as we have gas farms or gas tanks in these places, somebody builds a storage facility that has the ability to store over 100,000 liters. And he says, I'm not interested in buying gas. All I'm interested is if you want to store your gas, come and hire my gas farm, my tank farm. I'm going to give you the opportunity. And for every day that your gas stays in my gas farm, have it at the back of your mind, you're going to be paying for every month, you're going to be paying 500,000 naira for 1,000 liters. That's just what his job is. And he's making his money. That's one of them again. Another opportunity that's available for us to make use of and see in this energy transition is startup kits. Most of our vehicles are actually running and generators are currently running on petrol, diesel. But the truth is that we have conversion kits that can convert your fuel generators to gas generators. So it means instead of you making use of petrol or diesel, all you simply need to do is get your cylinder of gas, and that's what you're using running your generators. So you have access, even your cars can also be retrofitted to contain gas, to make use of gas. It's not much of a big deal. So we are saying that for those who want to become suppliers of these kits, and they are saying, okay, please give us 1,000 of these kits. We want to become suppliers because those who are going to come in and harness this opportunity are going to cash out big time. And so people come in, they buy it, and then they begin to market it to companies. Because the beautiful thing about gas is that it's cleaner, it will last longer for you. You're not scared of it polluting the environment. And so you come in, you buy this conversion kit, you make use of it for your houses, you make use of it for your companies, and everybody is happy, the environment is kept safe. I'm sure banks will be willing to give you loan if you tell them, oh, I want to go into this business. Of course, there are lots of persons who already have funds to go into this, probably just 1 million, 2 million, 10 million, 5 million. You've bought yourself some conversion kits and then you can begin to market it. You can become a wholesaler, or you can become a retailer. So how do we, then the other part, we could create applications that could connect suppliers and consumers together. So for instance, in Port Harcourt, let's say, for instance, let's look at Port Harcourt as a case study. We have people who are saying that, how do we know those who have these conversion kits want to buy from them? A developer comes in, and what the developer does is everybody who is a supplier registers on his application. They all have to pay a fee for them to get registered. And then everybody, all consumers are free to make use of the application. So since consumers are free to make use of the application, all they simply have to do is they all come in and then, you know, they click on a particular consumer or supplier that they want and the person sends it to them. Shipping can also be done, the same thing that Jumia does. They can also be shipping. If you also want gas to be delivered to your house, you're going to see all the agents that you need there. And then with that, as simple as possible, you click on the agent's name and you call the agent and give the agent your location. So with that, we are good to go. So I believe I've exhausted as much opportunities as I can. There are so many more opportunities I know that we all have the bright minds of seeing and we can be able to utilize. The truth is that we must learn how to create opportunities and don't wait for the right opportunity. We are the ones who will need to create those opportunities. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, I would love to have them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henry, for that insightful presentation. Please, can we have a virtual hand of applause for him? A virtual hand of applause for him. That was a very amazing one. First of all, Mr. Henry first introduced us to natural gas. He said that natural gas is a cleaner option than other fossil fuel, and is often a bridge. Is a bridge towards renewable energy. I also made mention of the storage facilities. He also talked about that's the storage facilities for natural gas. He talked about gas utilization and also the opportunities available. And during the course of this presentation, we had some amazing people that just logged in. I could see our SPE YP lead in the call. I could also see some of the members, SPE YP members in the call, and I could also see our alumni, our amazing alumni. We want to say thank you for coming into this section. And please, could anybody drop? There's no question for him. Is there a question for him? Is there any question for Mr. Henry? I cannot see any question in the chat box. Thank you very much, Mr. Henry, for this presentation. Daniel, please, can you change the slide? Thank you. Okay, please, Abbas, please, can we have your question?
Okay.
Hello. Good day. May I go on?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Okay. Thank you for the insightful presentation. I would like to ask why you mentioned that gas from Bonny is usually routed to Lagos before being distributed to other parts of the country. This is the first time I'm hearing that, and I would like to ask, why is it so? Is it like the distribution point is in Lagos? Given the closeness of NLNG's location to, say, places down south, will it not be, well, just the basic reason why the gas has to go to Lagos before being distributed, basically? Thank you, sir.
Okay, well, gas is really routed through Lagos simply because there's actually a tank farm there, a gas tank farm there. And that person is really making a whole lot of money from that. So that's one of the things that we are talking about. But here in Port Harcourt, we don't have a gas tank farm that can really house that. So after it reaches, and then the person already has a contract with LNG. So I'm sure LNG will not just want to be attended to very, very little contracts. They want to attend to very huge contracts and all that. But it's not just about buying it. You need to have a major tank farm. So after he buys, he sends it down to Lagos where the tank farm is. And then from Lagos, that's a distribution point. So he's more like a wholesaler giving out to other smaller retailers that you see probably at the filling stations and all that. So that's it. I hope I've clarified you, sir.
Yes, basically. So just to clarify and get your point clearly, so it means we have just one gas tank farm in Nigeria, basically, and that is in Lagos. So we don't have any down north, down towards another part, or even towards any of the other regions as well.
I'm not very certain about the north having a gas tank farm, but for now, I am fully aware of that of Lagos.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. You're welcome.
Okay, the network have not really been my friend today. Any other question for Mr. Henry, or can we move over to the next slide? Mr. Charles.
Yeah, I have my hand up.
Okay, so Mr. Charles, we'll have you now.
Good evening. Charles Abaronia is my name. I'm
Okay.
from Kosh. Every day we hear of these renewable and cleaner sources of energy. But actually, when we go to the field where crude is produced, we don't seem to see the effect. Those changes we hear, we don't seem to feel it. I don't know if there's plans by the government or any other agency to stop flaring in this part of the world, because I don't think we should be talking of a cleaner or renewable sources of energy when we are still flaring. These gases we are talking of they are the things we are flaring, causing more harm to the environment. I don't know if there's plan or alternative means of producing this crude without flaring. Thank you.
Okay. Well, the truth be told, yes, the government already has some laws on flaring, but most companies, especially for the IOCs, they are currently working on ways they can reduce flaring. For instance, Total Energies, their Ekike projects, which is currently one of their newest projects. The plan is actually to ensure that the flares are sent back into the reservoir. Now, that's to tell you how much these guys are doing their possible best to reduce flaring. Everybody is actually aware that flaring is not so good to our environment. They are all doing their best. The Nigerian government might not really be pushing so hard for it, but I do know that the IOCs understand, because beyond the Nigerian government, they are also sanctioned by other European Union that they all belong to. So they understand the fact that they need to begin to cut down on it. I don't remember Slumberger during NICE 2022 conference. When I was at Slumberger booth, one of the things I remember was that Slumberger they have, I think I wrote about that on my LinkedIn. Slumberger they have facilities that they use to detect gas leaks. So with this, there is really a whole lot that these IOCs and these companies are doing to ensure that they reduce flaring as much as possible. That move is being made. And I'm sure if you go back to the last 10 years or last 20 years, you will notice that flaring has really been reduced. You might not necessarily feel it, perhaps on your skin or something. You might not necessarily feel it. At least we are not, as a matter of fact, let me put it this way, if not because of the suits that we have in Nigeria, in Port Harcourt, Africa is not even one of the highest people who flares gases. Gas flaring is not really, because we're not the ones with the highest amount of industries. I just hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, that's one. Secondly,
Okay.
during your presentation, you made mention of storing gases, processed gases in a reservoir.
Yes, sir.
After storing them, when you then need it or a firm needs it to be supplied, do you still pass it through a process plant, or you now supply the stored gases? Because I'm aware that such reservoirs can have contaminants.
Exactly, sir.
So are you still going to process again, or you supply what you have there direct? Thank you.
Okay, now you will need to reprocess again. So what really happens is that, because of course there will be impurities, but the impurities will not be as much as the real one that comes out from a reservoir that has not been processed. So what simply happens is that every company who knows that they need gas to be stored in their reservoir needs to have a little processing plant just to take away those minor impurities before they make use of it. So that's just it. So you of course, impurities will be there, but it will not be as much as when it was unprocessed. Okay, any other question?
Thank you very much, Mr. Henry. Since there's no more question, I think we have to move to the next section. Thank you. Please, can you put a virtual hand of applause for Mr. Henry? He has done a lot. Thank you very much for introducing us to so many things that we don't know about. Thank you, Mr. Henry. Can we move over to the next slide? Okay, which is our quiz. Okay. To handle this quiz, please permit me to invite our game master. Hope you are ready. Hope you are excited. Be prepared to answer some questions. So our game master, his name is Anthony Patter. He will be the one to serve you these questions. So Anthony Patter, you have the floor.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks, Precious. Thanks, Mr. Henry. That was an insightful session. I hope we all listened it. Well, we'll get to find out because I hope you listened, because some questions surely would come from his presentation. So if you check the chats on Zoom here, you'll find the link, or you can scan the barcode on your screen as you're seeing it. Please, attached to your name, please include the last 4 digits of your phone number so we can verify our winners. And trust me, our prize is huge. So let's wait for more winners as we see. We have two persons have joined, Java Black, V8775. Marco, please, I need the last 4 digits of your phone number. So in case you win, we would want to verify. Gas, please, we need the last 4 digits of your phone number. Okay, fantastic, 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 fantastic. So the rules of the game, answer as quickly as possible. You have 2 rounds, 20 questions. So the first round, 10 questions. Thereafter, second round, 10 questions. So try to answer as quickly and as accurately as possible. So I think if I have 5 more, if we get to 20, I will start. So let's wait for 8 more. I can see, okay, Marco has included the last 4 digits of his phone number. Great, so 15, 5 more to go. Please join in, join in, join in. We are eager to give you this prize. It's too huge to miss out on. Okay, 17. Wheezy, please, we need the last 4 digits of your phone number. Abbas, Mr. Abbas, please, the last 4 digits of your phone number. You might just be our lucky winner for the evening. Okay, 18, so 2 more to get rolling. Oh, 20, so the game starts now. Three, 2, great. Yeah, so this question, I think pretty much everybody should get this. Okay, let's see. Whoa, fantastic. So we have 11 correct answers, 1 wrong answer. Okay, great. So you can see Abbas is currently leading, but unfortunately, Abbas doesn't have the last 4 digits of his phone number. So he might just be playing for someone else. So the second question, which of these is a gas storage option? I think you should all get this. You should all get this question. 3, 2, 1. Fantastic. So we have 16 correct answers. Okay. And so we have a new leader, Damilola 5738. Okay, the third question. Which of these problems could happen if you don't look after the resources we have? Oh, fantastic. So we have, I will fill this question. So that's fine. Let's see who's leading now. Oh, still Damilola. Okay, the fourth question. Cows. Oh, really? Fantastic. Okay. Female elephants are called cows. So how I know? Scoreboard. Still Damilola. Okay. The fifth question. Okay, so that is generated. So pardon the generated, that is generated. Oh, fantastic. So we have Damilola, you dropped small now. Okay, so the next question. Which of these is a COVID variant? Remember COVID? We have 19 answers so far. 15 correct answers. Fantastic. Okay, Damilola still leads. The seventh question, 3 more to go for this round. Queen Elizabeth. Damilola is still leading. Fantastic. 8th question. Okay, 19 answers, 10 correct answers. Great. Okay, so Damilola still leads after the 9th question. Okay. Who is Nigeria's petroleum minister? I think we should all get this one. Nine, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay. Our question. Damilola has dropped. UK 5283. Okay, so the 10th and final question for this round. The plural form of equipment is okay, so at the end of this round, we can see our winner is UK 5283. So keep it up, UK 5283 and AT8301. Try to catch up. When we come back for the second round, you may just be our lucky winner. And don't forget, our prize is huge. Thank you very much, Precious.
Wow. Thank you, Anthony, for that game session, for that brain teasing questions. Who doesn't know that? Who didn't know that the female elephant is called a cow like me? I hope you also enjoyed the game. If you enjoyed it, just an emoji in the chat box. Just an emoji in the chat box will be fine. Because I really had fun. Okay, so during the course of the game, some persons also came into the call. I could see Agava was our alumni. He's our alumni. I could see Chime in the group. Welcome. Thank you very much for honoring our invitation. I could also see YP President, Miss Ofere. She's still here with us. I could see Princess CEO4. She's our alumni. I could also see Olawale Ajayi is also our alumni. Thank you very much for staying up to this time. Okay. So can we go over? Thank you, Pata, for that game section. Thank you for the question. So let's go over to the next section, which is our technical section, which will be anchored by Nosakari Paul. Nosakari Paul, over to you.
Thank you so much, Precious. And good afternoon, everyone. Hope we are having fun, because I am. I have the singular honor and privilege to invite our next speaker, who happens to be our keynote speaker, if you like. This gentleman enjoys to keep a low profile, actually, and allows his job to speak for him. He has been able to gather a lot of experience within a short period of time in the energy industry, mostly working as a geologist for more than 8 years. He currently works as a geologist for the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, formerly known as DPR. And we are honored to have Mr. Gideon Durbi. Mr. Gideon Durbi, thank you so much for having us, and you have the floor.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Nusa, for that introduction. Like you said, everything you said about me is correct. My name is Gideon, and I work with the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission. I'm a geologist. So we would just dive into the major events for today. I am particularly glad that Henry has done a very good job in introducing energy transition and what I'm about to talk about. I was thinking I would have to go over to explain some of the basics, but I believe Henry's presentation has done good justice to the background I would have made. So thank you, Henry, for your presentation. I liked your presentation. So basically, I would be talking about energy transition we're talking about energy transition globally, but I'll be zooming into Nigeria so that we talk about energy issues in Nigeria, current energy issues in Nigeria. I usually would want to always have an interactive session, and I wouldn't mind, I do not know what the moderators will think, but I wouldn't mind if you stop me while I'm presenting, and if you have any questions, really, so that you probably do not lose the questions you have. I always prefer it that way because it's more interactive, and then the possibility of anybody being distracted or losing their train of thought is not lost while if we have to wait till the end of the presentation. So I would enjoin you that in case you have any questions while I'm making my presentation, you may raise your hands in the comment section and we can answer them immediately. But if we have to wait till the end, I'll tell you, okay, maybe wait till the end when we'll be able to answer it. I hope that works for the organizers. Thank you very much. So I would like to start my presentation by, can everybody see my screen, please? If you can see my screen, just indicate so I know.
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much.
That's awesome, like all of it.
So the outline, can we see the outline, please?
Yes, we can see that, sir.
Good. Okay. I think we can write on it. So before we talk about, so first of all, we have to talk about Nigeria as a country, so that we understand the place of energy and how it affects our lives and how it affects the demand for energy and why we even have to transit. So basically, these are information I'm sure most of us know that currently in Nigeria, the population keeps on growing. And currently, we're estimated to be about 200 million people in Nigeria. It said that we're the largest population in Africa and then the seventh largest in the world. By projections, it says that in 2050, Nigeria have the third largest population globally. And I'd like to mention that where you have population, the opportunities. I know most times when we talk about growing population, we want to talk about the downsides of population growth. But in this context where I'm talking about, when we're talking about energy, there are more opportunities in population growth than disadvantages. So the economy is currently it's estimated to about 600 billion USD, including the informal sector. And then Nigeria is currently ranked as has the 22nd largest economy in the world. And then we're hoping that by 2050, Nigeria will be ranked 10th in the world. I think I'm having a little challenge changing from one slide to another. I believe it's network. So you just be patient with me, please. Okay. So the energy resources, the overview of the energy resources we have in Nigeria. So just like Harry had earlier pointed out, he talked about the huge gas resources we had. He talked particularly about gas. I also want to include the oil resource we have. The reserve, Nigeria's reserve is estimated to about 37 billion barrels and 206 trillion scf of gas. That's the current reserve in Nigeria. And according to Oil and Gas Journal, Nigeria's estimated that 6 billion barrels of crude oil is the second largest in Africa after Libya. Only Libya has bigger reserves than Nigeria currently. And hopefully we can keep that up because there's an aggressive drive to try to grow Nigeria's reserves. So hopefully we can maintain this spot or even do better than Libya, hopefully. I always want to be optimistic and be optimistic about the country. So that's all we can do for now. So as at last year, the average crude production was about 1.6 million barrels per day, averagely. I don't have the figures for this year, but I would give a plus or minus 400,000 barrels to what we have. So maybe we're probably doing between plus or minus 400,000 barrels from 1.6 million. So energy remains the principal driving force for every form of development that any country would necessarily experience. So in as much as energy is one of the major drivers for the economy, we need to make sure that whatever we are using is clean, is efficient, is sustainable, and then it's ideal for global prosperity. Developing economies like Nigeria, we require very robust access to reliable and advanced energy service due to our escalating population and socio-economic activities. In order to cause prosperity, to reduce the level of poverty, to promote economic growth in every sense of the word growth. So basically what I'm just trying to say here is that energy in whatever form, particularly, but in this case, we're looking at oil and gas, is a key driver for development in any society. And in the case of Nigeria, we can see that the decent growth and the decent development that we've had over the years has been hinged upon availability of energy through petroleum. And so the better we manage and use resources, the better the development for us. There's a collective growth and prosperity for all of us if we are able to sustainably use these energy resources that we have been freely given by God. So these are some statistics that we have. We're looking at what the population was. So I'm trying to bring the first 3 slides I've been presenting, puts population side by side to access to power. That's through access to power through energy, basically. And then we can see what the figures were like, and then plus the GDP as well. So we can see that in 2000, our GDP was about 392 billion USD, and then the population was about 122 million people, and people who had access to electricity were just about 40% of the population. And the people who were able to who had access to clean cooking, just 1%. So as the years have gone by, 2018, we've seen some improvements, and then the projections for 2030 and 2040. So these are a few statistics for Nigeria. This is also these are charts showing the energy mix for the various years. So 2010, we had this amount of sources of energy that was being used in Nigeria, from coal, oil, gas, hydro, solar, other low carbon, bioenergy, and the rest. So this is the global energy mix for the world. This is the sources of energy that the world uses. So we have oil as the major source of energy for the world at 34%. We have natural gas at 23%. We have coal at 28%, and nuclear energy, hydroelectricity, which is renewables, which should have been part of renewables. But we have decided to split it, and then other renewables is 4%. So this is basically a pie chart showing the sources of energy for the world, and we can see. I think one thing that really stands out is the use of oil and gas, which is oil, gas, and coal, which carry the largest percentage. They're all fossil fuels, all 3 of them, and oil and gas takes the highest ratio at 34 and 23%. So good thing for us in Nigeria is that we are blessed with the top 3 here, and what that means for us is possibility of economic growth if properly managed. So for Nigeria, this is the energy mix for Nigeria. This is how we currently have consumed. This is a 2017 record. This is how we consume energy, the types of energy we use. We have petroleum at 55%, natural gas at 42%, renewables and solid biomass and waste is just about 3%. So solid biomass and waste is basically talking about use of firewood and other waste that's being used to generate energy. But the larger proportion still goes to, even in Nigeria, still goes to petroleum and natural gas at 55% and at 42%.
Mr. Gideon.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just could you speak up, please?
Oh, okay. Sorry. I think I'll come closer to my mic.
Okay, I think this is better.
Okay. So the most primary energy consumption in Nigeria is derived from petroleum, like I said earlier, is derived from petroleum and other liquids. Traditional biomass and waste, like I said earlier, it consists of wood, charcoal, manure, crop residue for power generation. Coal and renewables accounted for only 2%. So that being said, that's more like the background I would like to lay for us. I want to talk about energy transition now. Now we understand what energy is about. We understand the concept of petroleum as a source of energy in the form of, so anytime I say petroleum, I'm not only talking about crude oil. Petroleum can mean crude oil, it can also mean natural gas, as far as this context is concerned. Or I could also use fossil fuels, basically the same things. So I would like to introduce the concept of energy transition. So basically, energy transition is just moving away from fossil fuels to a cleaner form of energy. Somebody will ask, why are we trying to move away from fossil fuels? If we are saying that fossil fuels is a source of economic growth, so why are we trying to move away from it? So fossil fuels emit greenhouse gases, and greenhouse gases causes climate change. This climate change in the sense that the greenhouse gases, they conserve heat to an extent, and so they raise the temperature of the atmosphere and generally of the earth, and that causes climate change. And one particular pertinent thing it causes is that it causes the melting of glacier, and then the melting of glacier leads to the rise in rise in sea levels. A rise in sea levels can lead to flooding and the submerging of the entire earth underwater. Already we know that the world is made up of 70% water, and a large chunk of that percent is made up of glacier, which is ice. So with the rising of the temperature of the earth, this glacier will melt and then will be deposited into the liquid sea. And then the sea level rises, and then there's flood, and then there's submersion of the earth. And so that is what globally the world is trying to fight against. And that is why the world is calling for, okay, we need to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases we emit into the earth, into the atmosphere, because the amount of greenhouse gases is directly proportional. The amount of greenhouse gases is directly proportional to the amount of heat and warmth that the earth will generate, causing those other processes, like I said earlier. So that is the basic concept for transitioning. We're trying to avoid the use of of fossil fuels in order to save the earth. So energy transition is a pathway toward transformation of global energy sector from fossil-based to zero carbon by the second half of this century. So at the heart of transition, we're just trying to reduce CO2, because CO2 is one of the major greenhouse gas that we have. There are other greenhouse gases, but CO2 is one very major one, and it's the major one that has been emitted from different activities, particularly from industrial activities, from industrial activities, from transportation as vehicles, from cooking, from domestic activities. So that is where we emit a lot of CO2. And then the world is saying, oh, well, we need to reduce the amount of CO2 that is being emitted, that has been deposited into the atmosphere. So action is needed to reduce the carbon emissions. And the way to go about that, the world is recommending, is suggesting that we move to renewable sources of energy. Thank you, Henry, again for highlighting renewables earlier in your presentation, which has made my job easier to do. So with renewables, we'll be able to reduce the amount of CO2 if we have options. So currently, the reason why in the energy mix we use more natural gas and crude oil or other petroleum products is because of the availability is readily available. We have a lot of it deposited on the earth. And two, it is relatively more affordable than the other sources of energy. And so that is so. If we are moving away from this, we need to have, it's easier for us to move to something which has more advantage than what we already have. So when we are moving to something else, we need something which is probably cheaper than fossil fuels. And then we need something which is more readily available. Now, one of the major challenges that is facing the transition is that the world has not necessarily gotten any source of energy that is as readily available and as affordable as fossil fuels. And that is why the world is still heavily dependent and reliable upon fossil fuels. However, a lot of work is being put in that direction. A lot of investment is going into, a lot of research is going to renewable energy in order for the world to move from fossil fuels and then to renewables. So like I said earlier, most of the energy that we consume in Nigeria is from I think I've gone back, sorry. Okay. Sorry for that mix up, please. So if you look at this transition, you'd see from the 18th century to the 2000s, we'd see how we have transitioned from different sources of energy. At the earliest, you would see that we were using a lot of biomass, we're using a lot of wood, we're using agricultural products and every other thing to produce energy. And then we transitioned from biomass to wood, basically, majorly wood. And then we moved from that, and then coal was discovered, which was the first fossil fuel that was readily available and readily used. And then from coal, we now transitioned into crude oil and then natural gas, basically crude oil. And then currently, we are at the place where we're using a lot of crude oil and natural gas. Beyond this, beyond crude oil now, the world is looking at paying attention more to natural gas and dropping the crude oil. So eventually we would see that this chart is going to take us from crude and take us to basically natural gas. And why natural gas? Just like we had said earlier, natural gas is a cleaner source of energy. And the amount of CO2 that's been emitted from the combustion of natural gas is lower than the other fossil fuels like coal and crude oil. And therefore, that's the reason why the world is looking towards, okay, the energy for the future, the energy for the next 10, 20 years, the world is looking at natural gas. And now, God so kind, the good part for us is that the opportunities are there for us in Nigeria. as a Nigerian, these are where the opportunities are. These are the places to key in, because the world is going natural gas. And Nigeria has the largest, like we saw earlier, that Nigeria has the largest gas reserve in Africa. And so that means that the African market is ours for the taking, and even the global market. But if we're going to start from home, the African market is ours. And you can imagine the population in Africa. So the world is looking towards gas to power the world, because Africa makes a very substantive number of the population of the world. So that's a lot of potential out there for Nigeria to look into. So energy transition in Nigeria, how well have we done? How good have we done? So for now, we are looking at, in Nigeria, we are looking at, in as much as like the rest of the world, we are trying to transit from the more dirtier energy to cleaner energy. We also talk about how to do it in such a way that it is not going to be harmful for the economy and for Nigeria. So the more developed world, the more developed countries, they have had their very good share of very good benefits from exploration and production of petroleum. And I think Nigeria is yet to get to that point and that position where they are in. It's not just Nigeria. So most times the Nigerian case study is applicable to the rest of Africa and the rest of the developing world. And the developing world you find in South America and then East Asia. I mean, Eastern Europe and parts of Asia. So we all have the same problems. We are saying that, well, the developed countries are at the forefront of saying we need to transit from dirtier energy to cleaner energy, like natural gas. We said, yeah, we say, so Nigeria is saying, and the rest of Africa is saying, yes, we agree with you. It is very important, it's very pertinent. However, we do not even contribute as much as you do to the amount of greenhouse gases that has been emitted into the atmosphere. The percentage that the developing countries contribute is very little compared to what they are emitting into the atmosphere. So we are saying we need to be just about it. We need to be fair about it. And let us have our fair share of development using crude, using petroleum before. And so it means, basically what that means is that we cannot be going on the same pace with the developed countries. We cannot be transiting at the same pace. So if they have more ambitious goals of transiting, maybe say in 2030, 2040, countries like Nigeria are saying that, oh, we probably need more time, maybe 10 more years, 20 more years, so that we can at least catch up. So for Nigeria, we're saying that the carbon export will continue to be a mainstay for our economy. And we are hoping that using that before we enter into the energy transition. So while we are trying to transit to get to renewables, we are saying that natural gas will be that fuel that we are going to use before we get into the use of those renewables like solar, like wind, like biomass and coal and so on. So we are saying that that we want to use the natural gas that we have, the abundant natural gas that we have in our system, to be able to fund that growth before we get to the zero carbon sources of energy. So, like I said earlier, remember that I said that natural gas also still has some CO2. It's just that the amount it emits into the atmosphere is lower than.
Mr. Gideon,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
We're still struggling to hear you clearly. Is there a way you could maybe speak up louder?
Let me try and get a headphone so that I'll be talking directly to the headphones and then.
Okay, thank you.
Just give me 2-3 minutes. Let me find one.
Okay, while Mr. Gideon is sorting out the technical issues on his end, if there are questions that you have concerning what he's discussing, please feel free to drop them in the chat box. Thank you very much.
So I don't know if you can hear me now.
Yeah, it's a bit better.
Yes, this is better.
It's better now?
Yes, this is perfect.
Okay. So I'll just continue from where I stopped. Sorry for that interruption. I hope we don't lose the train of thoughts that we are on currently. So I was trying to say, for us to achieve a just and a fair transition, we would need to use natural gas as our source before we finally go into the something we talked about, net zero. So basically, when we say net zero, we're trying to see how, when we say net zero, we're trying to see how we can balance between the amount of CO2 that is being emitted into the atmosphere and the amount of CO2 that we take out of the atmosphere. So by the time we get to net zero, most times we are looking at, okay, we will still emit CO2. However, we have another mechanism for taking out or balancing the amount of CO2 that has been emitted into the environment. So the Nigerian Energy Transition Plan, just as was agreed in the Paris Agreement and this in the COP26 agreement, we are saying that we are going to cut down on emissions by 2060 in Nigeria. That is what we are looking at. We're looking at 2060. most parts of the world are looking at 2050. We are looking at 2060. That at that time we should be able to cut down on the amount of CO2 that is being emitted into the atmosphere, and we'll probably be talking more about renewables as at that time. So, like I said earlier, natural gas is relatively clean when burned, when combusted. It generates about 45% and 30% less CO2 than coal and oil, respectively. Natural gas is cheaper and available in abundance. The world has about 7,019 trillion cubic feet of gas currently, of natural gas currently. And so it's because of this abundance, like I said earlier, because of this abundance and the versatility of this gas that everybody's looking towards natural gas. And for some reasons, so like I said earlier, that in preparation for, so there's going to be COP27. What COP really is the UN assembly for all the nations of the world to assemble together and then make a plan on how to cut down on greenhouse emissions, and how to transit from dirtier energy to cleaner energy. And Nigeria is part of the COP27. The COP27 is yet to happen, but we have had the COP20. We had the COP26 earlier this year. So as a result of COP26, Nigeria launched a plan that they call, so these are some of the policies that Nigeria has. Nigeria launched a plan called the Energy Transition Plan, which is a homegrown plan and our own strategy in order to meet net zero by 2060. The Energy Transition Plan strategy is to achieve net zero by 2060. But while doing that, Nigeria plans to use that means to solve poverty, energy poverty, and then we're also trying to lift out 100 million Nigerians out of Nigeria, trying to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty by use of natural gas, basically. So I know that there's a fear for most people to think that when there's a cut in, when we transit, there's going to be job losses. I'm sure people in the industry have the fears that, oh, they'll probably lose their jobs and all of that. But the good thing about the energy transition is that the oil industry, the big players and the IOCs and most people are now also changing their own strategy and becoming energy companies rather than just remaining as oil and gas companies. And so that calls for a level of diversification for us, even in career as well. So your interest now should not only be in petroleum, in oil and gas. I know that most of us are within that space, but I believe our interest should span beyond just oil and gas and be looking more towards the energy mix generally. So the good thing is, thanks to Total, and see, we are an energy company now. We call it Total Energies, and even our own indigenous company, which is NNPC. NNPC is saying that they are also an energy company and they are doing various projects in renewables as well. In order to, so everybody's trying to rebrand, everybody's trying to strategize, everybody's trying to change towards that period. So energy transition is not necessarily going to cause a cut in jobs. Instead, I believe there's going to be more jobs if we are able to harness the process, and we are able to harness the resources we have properly. So Nigeria's net zero path will result in significant net job creation, with over 340,000 jobs created by 2030 and up to 840,000 jobs created. So we're saying that gas will play a significant role as a transition fuel as we try to get to net zero. So Nigeria's energy transition creates significant investment opportunities such as the establishment. Somebody say something, please.
Gideon, you can carry on, please.
So I want to dwell on one of the policies of government currently. So last year, August, the government passed the Petroleum Industry Act, and we would see how in that act, if we take a look at that act, we will see how government is trying its best to, one, government is also trying to brand. So government is saying that, oh, we are no longer, because initially government was more about developing oil, but you see that in the PIA, government has tried to encourage the exploration and production of natural gas, particularly natural gas. And so you would see that the licenses that government used to give, earlier the government will probably give licenses and call them oil prospecting licenses, like an OPL, like we know them, or an OML, we call them an oil mining lease. But now government has decided to also try to brand and change those names. Don't call them oil alone, because it's not only oil we are looking for anymore. We are trying to concentrate more on gas. And so government has now decided to change those names from oil, and rather it's trying to call them petroleum. So now they have the new license they call the petroleum mining lease. And the petroleum, so instead of the oil mining lease, they now call it, they now make a new license or a new lease called the petroleum mining lease. Or instead of the OPL, which we know it as oil prospecting license, we now call it the petroleum prospecting license, a PPL. So these are some of the few things that government is trying to do. And then if you look at the act closely, you would see that issues around flaring is completely discouraged. It has always been discouraged, but this time around, there's no room for you to flare your gas. There's always going to be used for your gas. If you cannot use it, government will take over those sites, and government will take over those flaring sites and award it to somebody else, and that person will have the rights and the license to take your flared gas and find market for them and find market for them and distribute. So these are a few things government is trying to do. There's also, so I also tried to answer, there was a question by somebody who was asking about gas flaring and what government is doing. So there's another program that the government calls the Nigerian Gas Flare Commercialization Program. And what it's basically doing is the government is basically taking off those sites where companies are flaring, and they are giving it to other companies that are interested in those flared gas and say, oh, you can have it. And then you can probably have an off-taker, you can find market for it and then distribute this gas for other people to use. So you will no longer have rights to those, flared gas. Aside from that, government is trying to encourage the use of gas domestically, and then we'll see that evidently in the pipeline that government is laying from right in Bonny, the AKK pipeline, which they are laying from Ajakuta, Kano, Kaduna, trying to open up industries around trying to find off-takers for this business for this gas from the Niger Delta towards the north. And like Harry earlier said, usually you wouldn't produce gas. You don't necessarily store a lot of gas in a single place. So most times you need to have pipelines directly from the point of production to the point of use. So that's why now government has come up with that project and then say, okay, we'll lay this pipeline, look for markets, fertilizer markets, fertilizer industries, LPG industries, and what have you, in order for us to have markets for this gas that is being produced and fled, and then find market for it. There are other programs that government is coming up with. Government is coming up with a program has also come up with a program. I mean, it's still in the very early stages for the use of CNG to power cars. And I think there are few filling stations in Nigeria where you can get CNG and power your car. So there's a couple of all of these things going on just to improve and to encourage the use of natural gas, the abundant natural gas we have. And I believe that in the coming years, we will have more on a lot of this, because already this decade has been declared the decade of gas. And so a lot of things are in the offing, a lot of things are happening in order for this abundant gas that we have in the country to be a source of prosperity, a source of development for us. So we can safely conclude that, well, the PIA is one
Hello,
of the
Mr.
biggest
Gideon.
direction.
It seems we're losing you.
Okay. Is it better now, please? I'm really sorry for the bad network. I'm not sure what is happening. It's raining where I'm in Abuja, and it's raining here. So I guess maybe the weather is causing bad network. Is it better now, please? Can you hear me, please? If you can hear me, let me know. Or I can.
It's better. You can go on.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, wow. Let me reset my network.
It seems Mr. Gideon is experiencing some technical issues on his end. Thankfully, he was almost at his conclusion, or concluding rather. So, Mr. Gideon, I don't know, are you back with us? Mr. Gideon.
So, hello, I'm back, please. I don't know if you can hear me. I had to log in on my phone.
Yes.
because my
Oh,
I
sorry to hear
guess
that.
my laptop is pretty bad. I'm really sorry and I apologize for it. The good part is that I am almost done with my presentation. The slide that was there was basically when I was talking about the PIA is the concluding remarks. I mean, is the concluding remarks basically. So I'll just try to wrap it up from there. So I was basically saying that the PIA is really in the right direction for natural gas development, for growth in the oil and gas industry, because it has put to rest a lot of long-standing issues that has always been there over the years. It has also brought clarity to some of the things that were not very clear. It also seeks to encourage and attract investors by being more definite. One thing the oil industry doesn't like is uncertainties. So the amount of, if the higher the uncertainties, the lower the likelihood for investment. So the PIA has tried its best to put to rest some of these issues and some of the uncertainties around oil exploration and production and development. And then one thing that is peculiar for me and particular for me, I'm very interested in, maybe because of my bias as a geologist, is that it encourages exploration. So unlike before that companies can hold oil blocks in perpetuity, even when they are operating, when they are not operating. Now, the PIA has created a system whereby if you don't use it, if you don't use your stranded assets, you'll be compelled to drop it for somebody else to come and pick it up and to use it and to develop. So it's a good thing in the right direction. A lot of petroleum engineers, a lot of geologists, a lot of field men would be gainfully employed, will gain a lot of experience when there's more exploration. In the past 10, 15, 20 years, there's been barely any serious exploration going on. Nobody's acquiring data, nobody's drilling wells, nobody's doing a lot. We're just producing from the old wells we have drilled in the past 40 years, 50 years, 30 years. But with the new act, we would see a more aggressive exploration going on. We have seen the award of recently awarded marginal fields. And in no time, you would see these people coming, oh, we want to drill, want to acquire data, we want to carry out different operations, we want to do workovers, we want to re-enter. Many different operations will go on, because if you don't do these things, you would lose the asset. Nobody wants to lose an asset. And that is part of the certainty that the Petroleum Act has brought. And so there will be more exploration activities, and that would mean better engagements for geologists, for petroleum engineers, and other professionals in the industry. So part of what is expected of the PIA is also that the discussions around the PIA and around the industry needs to be an ongoing one. Government always needs to sit down with the IOCs, the big players, because they have deeper pockets. And so government needs to sit with them, speak with them, ask their challenges, know what their challenges are, and know how to mitigate it in order to attract investment. And as attracting investment in the country, there's development for the country, there's employment for people, and there's general prosperity for everybody. So that's on the PIA, and I believe I've come to the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, you can ask me. If you need me to go back on some of the places that you probably were not able to keep up because of the technical issues, I will gladly go back and then we can walk through them again. I'm sorry again for my network, and I hope we were able to
get one or two things out of my presentation. Thank you very much. And thank you, IPS, for inviting me.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Gideon. Thank you so much for this extensive lecture. I mean, we run through energy security down to the PIA and what that means, and its implication in the oil and gas sector. Thank you so much, Mr. Gideon, again. We also apologize for the technical glitches, but I believe that we are going home with content. Thank you so much again. So just as he has mentioned, if there are questions that you have, you could type them in the box or signify by a raise of hand. Thank you so much.
I would prefer if we can have an interaction, and then so of course you can drop them in the comment section, but I would prefer if you can have a discussion instead.
Okay, that's fine then. Okay, that's great. That's great. Okay, Miss Etemire Chigozie, you have a question.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Gideon, for that insightful lecture. I particularly enjoyed it. So my question is that, first of all, has the PIA Act made the cost of exploring crude oil and gas more expensive? Then if yes, how then is the PIA Act favoring the oil and gas industry?
Thank you very much for your question. I would say that, matter of fact, the PIA has made oil and gas operations generally more attractive. Now, I need us to understand that oil and gas business is not, so when people are trying to invest in oil and gas businesses, they're not looking at only, when they are looking at the options, you know what opportunity cost basically is? People want to put in their money in the place where they get the best returns. So let's take, for example, Total International wants to invest in some projects. They would rank these projects, see the projects that bring in the best returns with the least amount of risk and resources. And they do not do that only for Nigeria. They do that, they put all of the countries and all the projects in the world in a basket. All the places they have stake and interest, they put them in a basket and then do the analysis and come up with what will give them the best returns. So when the PIA was made, all of these things were taken into consideration. You want to have an attractive investment destination where you can compete with other potential markets in the world. So one thing that stands out basically as far as cost of operation is concerned is that some of the tax that government used to impose on the companies, they have taken them off, and they are more, the operation is now more tax friendly. So there used to be, or there still currently is, because the PIA is still a work in progress. The implementation is still a work in progress. So there's what we call the PPT, which is the Petroleum Profit Tax. Now, under the old law, companies were being subject to this tax, but the PPT has been scrapped. There's no longer PPT anymore. There's rather a tax they call the hydrocarbon tax, and that tax is more attractive than the other old tax, the PPT. So generally, the PIA is a more progressive act compared to what we earlier had, which is the Petroleum Act 1969. And while the act was made, we took into consideration the other competing markets in Africa, in the rest of the world, in order to make that act. So I would say, overall, the act is a more progressive act, and the cost of doing business under the act is better than what we had earlier. I hope that clarifies you, please.
Yes, that clarifies me. Thank you, sir.
Okay. I think the next person asking the question is Ginika. Mark Ginika. Are you ready for your question?
Okay, good evening. So thank you so much, Mr. Gideon. Just a quick one. I like to find out the full meaning of that abbreviation, PPL, against OML you mentioned.
Okay. So the PPL basically means Petroleum Prospecting License. It is basically what we had as an OPL. So it used to be Oil Prospecting License. Under the Petroleum Act, we have now moved to Petroleum Prospecting License, which is PPL.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you, Mark, for your question. And thanks, Mr. Gideon, again, for your response. The next person would be Titus. Titus, you ready with your question?
Okay, thank you, sir, for the presentation. I would like to know, you said Nigeria now has a plan, ETP, and their own is for 2060. All right, and I want to know why they said the first energy poverty. I don't understand what energy poverty means.
Okay, thank you for that question. I like that question. So the ETP means basically just an abbreviation for Energy Transition Plan, which Nigeria has just launched its own plan. It is basically the plan to move away from fossil fuels or crude oil particularly to more cleaner energy through the use of natural gas as the driver to get us to net zero. And net zero is basically the balance between the amount of CO2 and greenhouse gases that is emitted and then taking out that same emission out of the atmosphere. So energy poverty, like you asked, is, so if you look at the rest of the world, let's say it's basically